What if I told you that the words you speak to yourself today could shape who you become tomorrow? Imagine unlocking your true potential by simply changing the language you use every day. The power to transform your life doesn't lie in someone else's hands, it's in yours. Let's explore how the self-talk you practice can rewire your brain and create the life you've always wanted. You may not even realize it, but there's a powerful voice guiding your life every day. And guess what? It's not someone else's, it's yours. The words you say, whether out loud or in your mind, have tremendous power. They affect not only how you see yourself, but also how you interact with the world. In fact, your self-talk is one of the most powerful forces influencing your brain, emotions, and actions. Self-talk, the inner dialogue that we all have, isn't just idle chatter. It's not something we can ignore or take lightly. It has real consequences. Neuroscience shows that the brain isn't a rigid, unchangeable structure. It's plastic, which means it's flexible and capable of changing based on what we experience, pay attention to, and, yes, what we say to ourselves. So, when you speak to yourself in a certain way, you're literally rewiring your brain. Imagine this: by making a small change to the way you talk to yourself, you could start seeing shifts in your mindset, behavior, and even your physical state. And the best part? You don't need years of effort to make this change. In fact, if you start paying attention to your self-talk and practicing it with purpose for just 3 days, you can begin to reshape your brain in your life. How is that possible? Well, our brains are constantly being molded by the experiences we have, by what we choose to focus on, and by the words we repeat to ourselves. Each time you say something, whether it's positive or negative, your brain builds new pathways. The more often you repeat certain words or phrases, the stronger those pathways become. This means that you have the power to choose what those pathways are based on the language, tone, and timing of your self-talk. The beauty of this concept lies in the fact that our brains don't just respond to the literal truth of what we say. Instead, they react to the repetition and emotional intensity of the words. It doesn't matter if what you say is 100% true at the moment, what matters is that you keep saying it. For example, if you constantly tell yourself that you're bad at something, like math or public speaking, your brain starts to believe it, even if it's not objectively true. But if you tell yourself you can improve and that you have the ability to overcome challenges, your brain starts to listen to that, too, and begins creating the pathways to make those beliefs a reality. It all comes down to neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself and change based on what it focuses on. This plasticity allows you to reshape your mental habits, emotional responses, and even your identity. Your mind is constantly being shaped by the language you use and the beliefs you hold. The question isn't whether your self-talk is shaping your life, it's how. By being intentional with the way you speak to yourself, you can change your brain's wiring, boosting your confidence, increasing your resilience, and even helping you achieve your goals. In this video, I'm going to break down how exactly self-talk influences your brain and why it's such a powerful tool you can use to make real, lasting changes in your life. You'll learn how the words you speak to yourself aren't just reflections of your current mood or thoughts, they are active forces that shape your future. So, let's dive in and see how changing the way you talk to yourself can begin to change everything else. Have you ever stopped to think about how your brain works? It's not just a passive receiver of information from the outside world, it's an active participant in creating the reality you experience. Your brain is constantly interpreting and processing what's happening around you, but it's not just the external events that matter. The internal inputs, especially the words and thoughts you say to yourself, play an incredibly powerful role in shaping how you see the world and how you react to it. This is where self-talk comes in. The way you talk to yourself isn't just a mirror reflecting your current state of mind, it's more like a command center, instructing your brain on how to respond to situations. Imagine it like a GPS for your emotions, actions, and perceptions. If you tell yourself, "I'm terrible at this," your brain starts to align itself with that message, reinforcing pathways that make you feel incapable. But if you shift that internal dialogue to "I can figure this out," your brain starts creating new neural connections, reinforcing a sense of capability and resilience. Self-talk is not passive, it actively shapes your brain's wiring. Every word you speak to yourself, whether you're aware of it or not, sends a signal to your brain to adjust and align itself with that message. This isn't just some abstract idea, it's rooted in solid neuroscience. When you repeat certain phrases, especially ones that carry emotional weight, your brain begins to form and strengthen neural pathways that make those beliefs feel more real. Over time, these pathways become automatic and they start guiding your actions, thoughts, and reactions, often without you even realizing it. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This process influences more than just your thoughts. Your self-talk can significantly impact how you perceive the world and how you respond to stress or feedback. For example, if you constantly tell yourself that you're not good enough, you start to interpret feedback in a way that supports that belief. Someone might give you constructive criticism, but your brain, trained by your self-talk, will interpret it as a personal attack, making you feel even more insecure. On the flip side, if your self-talk is positive and empowering, you'll be more likely to see challenges as opportunities and view feedback as a chance to grow. Your self-talk also plays a crucial role in how your body responds to stress. When you tell yourself things like, "I can't handle this," or "this is too much for me," your brain activates the stress response system. It triggers the release of cortisol, the stress hormone, which prepares your body for a fight or flight reaction. But when you practice more supportive self-talk, like "I've handled tough situations before," your brain doesn't get as stressed. Instead, it triggers a calmer response, reducing the amount of cortisol released and helping you stay grounded. The beauty of this is that your brain doesn't discriminate between what's true and what's not. It learns based on repetition. If you've been telling yourself negative things for years, those negative pathways will become stronger. But the good news is, your brain is plastic, it can change. By intentionally shifting your self-talk to something more positive and empowering, you start to rewire your brain. Over time, this new way of thinking becomes your default, and the brain will start reinforcing those new, more positive pathways. In essence, your self-talk is not just a reflection of your current state, it's an active tool you can use to shape your perception of the world, control your reactions, and guide your future. The more intentional and positive you are with the language you use with yourself, the more you'll see your brain start to adapt and align with those new beliefs. It's all about how you choose to talk to yourself, and with enough practice, you can train your brain to be more resilient, focused, and positive. The brain truly is the architect of your reality, and your self-talk is one of the most powerful tools you have to influence that architecture. There's a powerful concept in neuroscience that says, "Neurons that fire together, wire together." This principle explains how the brain forms lasting connections. What it means is that when certain neurons in your brain fire in response to a repeated thought or action, those neurons create a stronger pathway. Over time, the more a particular set of neurons are activated, the easier it becomes for them to fire together again, reinforcing that thought, behavior, or emotion. It's like a well-trodden path in the forest. Every time you walk it, the path gets easier to follow. In the case of the brain, these neural pathways are crucial in shaping your behavior, thoughts, and even your sense of identity. When it comes to self-talk, this principle is especially powerful. What you tell yourself, day in and day out, actually shapes the way your brain functions and how you interact with the world. If you often use negative self-talk, you're reinforcing pathways that make it easier for your brain to slip into those negative patterns. For example, if you constantly tell yourself, "I'm not good enough," or "I always fail," your brain starts to create neural pathways around those beliefs. The more you say these things, the more entrenched those thoughts become. Eventually, they become automatic, shaping your behavior and perception without you even realizing it. When you face challenges, your brain is likely to revert to these default pathways of failure, making you believe that success is out of reach before you even try. On the flip side, positive self-talk works in much the same way, but it creates empowering pathways that benefit you. If you consistently remind yourself that you're capable, that you can learn from challenges, or that you have succeeded in the past, you're building neural pathways that help you grow and move forward. Repeating phrases like, "I can handle this," or "I've overcome hard things before," activates brain circuits that boost your motivation, emotional regulation, and resilience. These positive statements don't just feel good, they physically shape your brain to respond to obstacles with a growth mindset instead of a fixed one. This process is not only about the words you use but also about how often and how emotionally charged those words are. The reticular activating system, RAS, which is a network of neurons in your brainstem, plays a crucial role in filtering information. It essentially decides what gets your attention. When you repeat certain thoughts, the RAS starts to tune into experiences that align with those thoughts. For instance, if you keep telling yourself, "Things never go right for me," your RAS will start to notice and remember all the moments that align with this belief. You'll start focusing more on the negative aspects of life, and your brain will filter out opportunities that could have proven otherwise. Conversely, if your self-talk is more optimistic, such as, "There's always a way," your RAS will help you notice solutions, chances for growth, and positive outcomes, making it easier to take action. Another fascinating element is the emotional tone of your self-talk. The brain doesn't just process words, it processes the emotions that come with them. When you speak to yourself with strong emotions, your brain tags those words as significant. This means that self-talk delivered with passion, frustration, excitement, or even despair will leave a stronger mark on your brain than neutral or flat statements. For example, if you say, "I can't do this," with frustration, your brain takes it in with much more weight than if you said the same thing without any emotional charge. The more emotion you attach to those words, the more likely they are to be encoded in your memory, and this emotional impact reinforces the neural pathways associated with them. This emotional encoding is what makes certain phrases so powerful, even if they are not objectively true. Repeated, emotionally intense self-talk can become ingrained in your brain as if it were reality, because the emotional intensity makes those thoughts feel more significant. It's why telling yourself, "I'm a failure," over and over, especially with a tone of despair or anger, can become a deeply rooted belief that affects your actions and emotions. The opposite is true for positive and empowering language. If you use encouraging words with enthusiasm or confidence, your brain starts to associate those words with strength and capability. This emotional tone helps you build resilience, motivation, and a sense of personal power that influences how you approach every situation. By understanding how self-talk influences your brain, it becomes clear just how much control you have over your own thoughts and actions. You're not just thinking thoughts, you're shaping your brain and your future. Whether you're aware of it or not, every time you engage in self-talk, you're either strengthening neural pathways that lead to success or reinforcing ones that keep you stuck. So, when you choose your words carefully and speak with intention, you're actively creating the life you want to live. Repetition is one of the most powerful forces in shaping who we are and how we experience the world. When you repeat something over and over again, whether it's a physical action or a thought, you're essentially training your brain to make it a part of who you are. This process is especially important when it comes to self-talk, because the things we repeatedly say to ourselves become the foundation of our self-identity. Think about how consistent self-talk reinforces neural circuits that are tied to our sense of self. Each time you repeat something, whether it's positive or negative, your brain is creating stronger pathways that support that belief. For example, a child who repeatedly tells themselves, "I'm bad at math," after every failure or struggle with numbers, is creating a neural pathway that links their identity with being bad at math. Over time, this becomes a dominant belief that's reinforced with each encounter related to math. The child's brain starts to associate math with failure, and the thought, "I'm bad at math," becomes a default reaction whenever they face a math-related challenge. This is how self-talk can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you repeat certain phrases or beliefs about yourself, the more your brain wires itself to believe those thoughts. It's not because these beliefs are necessarily true, it's because the repetition has created a strong neural pathway that has become a default part of your identity. So, the child who continues to repeat, "I'm bad at math," won't just struggle with math, they may actively avoid it, feel anxiety when it's mentioned, or lack confidence when faced with math tasks. The neural pathway of failure becomes the brain's automatic response to any situation involving math. Now, consider the opposite effect. Empowering language used consistently can have the reverse impact. If someone continually tells themselves, "I am good at learning," or "I am capable of solving problems," those positive affirmations also build neural circuits that influence how the brain perceives challenges. With time, this empowering self-talk activates positive beliefs about oneself, which makes it easier to take on new challenges, be resilient in the face of setbacks, and believe that success is within reach. Repeating words like "I'm resilient" or "I can learn this" creates pathways of growth and possibility, reinforcing a positive self-concept and encouraging behavior that matches that self-image. The key behind this process is the default mode network, DMN, a network of brain regions that activates when we are not focused on external tasks, such as during daydreaming, self-reflection, or introspection. The DMN is closely tied to how we think about ourselves and our personal narrative. When we engage in self-talk, especially reflective or identity-based thoughts, we activate this network, reinforcing the beliefs we hold about ourselves. If our self-talk is negative, like "I'm not good enough" or "I always fail," the DMN reinforces these negative identities, making them feel even more ingrained in our sense of self. This process makes it harder to break free from these limiting beliefs, because they're constantly being reinforced. On the flip side, if our self-talk is positive and empowering, the DMN works to reinforce a more positive self-concept. Repeating phrases like "I am confident" or "I am capable" activates the brain circuits that support these beliefs and start to align the brain's actions and emotions with these positive identities. Over time, these empowering thoughts become automatic and form the foundation for behavior that matches the self-concept of someone who is capable, confident, and resilient. This ability of self-talk to influence behavior, emotions, and identity is profound. The more you repeat certain phrases, the more those phrases shape who you are. For example, if you repeatedly tell yourself, "I'm a failure," the brain will start to act as though that statement is true, even if it's not. It might lead to behaviors that align with failure, such as procrastination, giving up easily, or avoiding challenges. On the other hand, if your self-talk consistently reinforces a mindset of growth and resilience, your brain will start to act in ways that align with those qualities. It's a feedback loop. Your thoughts shape your identity, and your identity shapes your actions. Over time, this process of repetition becomes so ingrained that the thoughts you regularly have will dictate your behaviors, emotions, and even your perception of reality. So, the more you practice empowering self-talk, the more it becomes a natural part of your identity. You start to act not just based on your beliefs, but based on the neural pathways you've created through repeated thought. What you tell yourself daily will ultimately shape the person you become. In summary, repetition of self-talk is incredibly powerful because it doesn't just shape your thoughts, it shapes your very identity. Repeated empowering language creates neural pathways that align with positive behaviors, while repeated negative language creates pathways that reinforce limiting beliefs. The more you practice a particular type of self-talk, the more it becomes a part of you, influencing your actions, emotions, and even how you see the world. Your words have the power to shape your life, and through consistent, intentional self-talk, you can rewire your brain for success, resilience, and positive self-belief. Language isn't just a way to communicate, it's a powerful tool that shapes how we think, feel, and respond to the world. The way we talk to ourselves, our self-talk, is a key player in how we experience life. But did you know that the emotional tone behind our words can dramatically affect how the brain processes those words? It's not just the content of what we say to ourselves that matters, but the emotion behind it. When you speak to yourself with intensity, whether it's frustration, excitement, or fear, it activates specific brain regions that are deeply tied to emotional processing. One of the most significant areas is the amygdala, which plays a central role in detecting threats and processing emotional reactions. This part of the brain reacts to emotional signals, whether they come from external sources or from the thoughts you have inside your head. So, if you tell yourself, "I can't do this," with a tone of frustration or defeat, your amygdala is likely to become activated, signaling stress and anxiety. These emotional triggers can, in turn, influence how you behave and how you feel about the situation at hand. Tone is a crucial factor in how the brain processes self-talk. The brain doesn't just focus on the words themselves, it picks up on the tone in which those words are spoken. Tone can amplify or diminish the emotional impact of what you're saying to yourself. When you speak to yourself in a neutral tone, your brain might process the words more calmly, without triggering strong emotional reactions. But when you say those same words with emotionally charged tones, like anger, sadness, or fear, the brain responds more intensely. The amygdala lights up, triggering stress responses, and the body follows suit by producing stress hormones like cortisol, which can cause feelings of tension and anxiety. So, what's the difference between neutral, self-critical, and compassionate language? Let's break it down. Neutral self-talk, when you speak to yourself neutrally, it means you're just stating the facts, without any strong emotional involvement. For example, saying, "I made a mistake," without attaching any judgment or negative feelings. The brain registers the statement without triggering an emotional response, which means you're able to move on from the situation more easily. It's not overwhelming, but it also doesn't create a sense of calm or motivation. Self-critical language, when you use harsh, judgmental language with yourself, like saying, "I'm so stupid," or "I always mess things up," it activates emotional circuits in the brain, particularly in the amygdala, and triggers the stress response. This type of self-talk creates a cycle of negativity that can feel overwhelming. You're essentially reinforcing feelings of failure or inadequacy, which lowers your confidence and can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy where you start to believe you are what you keep telling yourself. Compassionate language, on the other hand, speaking to yourself with compassion, saying things like, "It's okay, everyone makes mistakes," or "I'm doing the best I can," activates different brain regions. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-regulation, decision-making, and emotional control, becomes more active when you talk to yourself kindly. This kind of language helps reduce stress and creates a sense of calm, which in turn promotes problem-solving, emotional regulation, and a growth mindset. By using compassionate self-talk, you're rewiring your brain to be more resilient in the face of setbacks. Here's an example of how the different tones of self-talk can affect your stress responses and behavior. Imagine you're preparing for a big presentation. If you tell yourself, "This is going to be terrible, I'll probably forget everything," with a tone of dread, your amygdala will likely trigger a stress response. You might feel your heart race, your palms sweat, and your thoughts become clouded with anxiety. These physical and emotional responses are a direct result of your negative, emotionally charged self-talk. As a result, you might make mistakes during the presentation because you're too anxious to focus or think clearly. Now, let's try a different approach. If you say, "I've prepared for this, I've got this," with a tone of calm confidence, your brain processes those words differently. Your prefrontal cortex gets activated, and your stress levels go down. You feel more focused and calm, and you're able to deliver the presentation with confidence because your self-talk has calmed your nervous system and improved your emotional state. The role of propriety, or the way in which we choose to express our emotions, is also important in how we process self-talk. Emotional processing isn't just about what we say, but how we say it. For example, upward inflections, where your pitch rises, and a rhythmic, upbeat tone tend to engage the right hemisphere of the brain, which is responsible for emotion, intuition, and broad perspective. Speaking in a soothing or encouraging tone sends a message to the brain that the situation is manageable, even if it's challenging. This engagement of the right hemisphere can promote calm, clarity, and connection with yourself. It can also signal to your brain that you are capable of overcoming obstacles, even if those obstacles seem daunting at first. On the other hand, a flat tone, monotonous or disinterested, can reduce emotional engagement, making the brain less likely to register the message as important. Sarcastic or dismissive tones can also activate negative emotions, like frustration or resentment, which can impair emotional processing and make it more difficult to stay grounded during challenges. So, whether you realize it or not, your self-talk shapes your reality, both mentally and physically. It influences your brain chemistry, stress response, and emotional regulation. The more emotionally charged your self-talk, the stronger the brain's reaction will be. But this reaction isn't set in stone, it's something you can change. By practicing compassionate and empowering language, you can train your brain to respond more positively to challenges, reduce stress, and regulate your emotions more effectively. In conclusion, the tone and emotional charge of your self-talk play a critical role in how your brain processes and responds to your internal dialogue. Compassionate and empowering self-talk helps activate the prefrontal cortex, promoting calm, clarity, and emotional regulation, while negative or self-critical language engages the amygdala and triggers stress responses. Understanding the impact of tone in your self-talk allows you to reframe challenges, regulate your emotions, and shift your mindset toward growth and resilience. So, next time you speak to yourself, remember that your words matter and the tone you use can change everything. When it comes to staying motivated and achieving long-term goals, it's not just about having a single burst of energy or feeling inspired once in a while. Motivation is deeply tied to consistency, particularly when it comes to how we talk to ourselves. Our self-talk, or the internal dialogue we have, is a powerful force that can either move us forward or hold us back. When you make a habit of using the right language every day, your brain starts to align with that consistency, setting you up for action and persistence. Think about it like this: every time you speak to yourself, you're essentially setting a tiny trigger for your brain. If your self-talk constantly encourages action, your brain starts to respond in kind, almost like it's being prepped for a specific task or behavior. It's like setting an alarm in your brain that says, "Okay, it's time to move." The more you repeat that language, the more your brain anticipates action. It's a powerful cycle. Repetition breeds action. And not just any action, but focused, persistent action that keeps moving forward, even when things get tough. One of the key players in this process is dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in your brain that's often referred to as the feel-good neurotransmitter, but it's not just about pleasure. Dopamine is more about anticipation, pursuit, and effort. It's what drives you to keep going when the task gets difficult. When your self-talk reinforces the idea of progress, no matter how small, it triggers steady dopamine release, keeping your brain motivated to take action. For example, if you repeatedly tell yourself, "I am moving forward, I'm making progress," even if it's just a little at a time, your brain rewards you with that dopamine boost, encouraging you to keep working toward your goal. Now, take a look at high performers, whether they're athletes, musicians, or business leaders. You'll often find that one of the common factors among them is repetition. These individuals don't just rely on inspiration to get through tough moments, they rely on specific self-talk. Repeating certain phrases or mantras fuels their action and helps them push through difficult circumstances. Take athletes, for example, when they're exhausted and about to give up, phrases like, "I'm strong" or "I've been here before" can make all the difference. Those repeated statements trigger the brain's motivation circuits, pushing them to take the next step, even when their bodies are begging them to stop. A key region of the brain involved in all of this is the anterior cingulate cortex, ACC. This part of the brain plays a central role in monitoring performance and detecting errors. When you engage in repetitive self-talk that emphasizes action and persistence, you're not just activating the brain's motivation system, you're also priming the ACC to help you stay on track. The ACC helps you stay focused by flagging when something's going wrong, so you can make adjustments, stay engaged, and continue moving forward. When you're constantly reinforcing your motivation through consistent self-talk, you're essentially giving your brain the tools to keep monitoring and correcting your behavior, even when it feels difficult or uncomfortable. This is especially powerful when challenges arise. Instead of getting overwhelmed or giving up, your brain is wired to keep adjusting and improving, based on the feedback loop created by your internal dialogue. So, how does this all come together? It's simple. Your self-talk is a continuous cycle that not only fuels action but also helps your brain stay focused and determined. The more consistent and empowering your self-talk is, the more it strengthens the neural pathways that drive you to act. This doesn't just apply to high performers, anyone can use this to their advantage. Whether you're trying to build new habits, tackle a big project, or simply stay motivated through the grind of daily life, the language you use with yourself shapes your brain's response. The more you repeat empowering phrases, the more your brain's dopamine system activates, reinforcing your drive and keeping you in motion. By practicing this kind of consistent self-talk, you're training your brain to expect success and resilience, even when things get tough. This constant reinforcement primes your brain for action, enhances your performance, and sets you up for long-term success. So, next time you feel stuck or unsure, remind yourself, consistency in your words creates consistency in your actions, and that's how you build a life of persistent progress. The words we say to ourselves every day are more than just thoughts. They're commands that directly impact our body's chemistry, influencing how we feel, think, and even perform. This connection between self-talk and our body's biochemical responses is crucial to understanding how our internal dialogue shapes our reality. In particular, self-talk has a profound effect on the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's central stress response system, which governs how we react to stress, emotional challenges, and physical demands. So, the language we use with ourselves doesn't just affect our mood or attitude, it directly impacts our health and our ability to cope with life's pressures. When you engage in negative self-talk, such as telling yourself, "I can't do this," or "I'm not good enough," it sends signals to your brain that you're under stress. This triggers the HPA axis to release cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. While cortisol is essential in moments of acute stress, it helps prepare the body for fight or flight by increasing heart rate, dilating pupils, and boosting energy. It's not meant to stay elevated for long periods. Chronic negative self-talk keeps cortisol levels high, which can impair cognitive performance, reduce immune function, and even contribute to feelings of anxiety and depression. The longer you engage in negative self-talk, the more your body remains in a state of stress, which ultimately lowers your ability to focus, think clearly, and perform well. On the flip side, positive self-talk, phrases like "I've got this" or "I'm capable of handling challenges," has the opposite effect on the body. Positive language helps regulate cortisol, reducing the stress response and shifting the body into a more balanced state. But that's not all. When you engage in positive self-talk, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which promotes feelings of trust, connection, and emotional safety. You also get a boost in serotonin, the neurotransmitter responsible for stabilizing mood and regulating emotional states. Higher serotonin levels are associated with feelings of well-being, confidence, and social connection, which help you stay resilient and positive, even in difficult situations. The body doesn't just react to positive words through neurotransmitters. It also responds with physical relaxation thanks to the vagus nerve, a key part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which controls the body's rest and digest functions. Positive self-talk activates the vagus nerve, helping lower heart rate, deepen breathing, and promote a sense of calm. This calming effect allows you to think more clearly, make better decisions, and manage stress more effectively. When you speak to yourself kindly or with confidence, your body shifts away from the fight or flight response and enters a state of relaxation that supports health and performance. The biochemical effects of self-talk extend beyond just cortisol and serotonin. Your internal dialogue also influences dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in motivation, reward, and pleasure. When you speak positively to yourself and reinforce beliefs of capability, your brain starts to expect success and progress. This expectation boosts dopamine production, which further fuels your motivation to take action, stay focused, and keep moving toward your goals. It's like a feedback loop. The more you affirm your ability to succeed, the more dopamine your brain releases, which in turn encourages you to take more steps toward achieving that success. Additionally, endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, are released in response to positive and empowering self-talk. These powerful chemicals help reduce the perception of pain and increase feelings of strength and resilience. For example, athletes often use motivating self-talk to push through physical challenges, and as a result, they experience higher levels of endorphins. This not only makes them feel more capable of handling pain, but also boosts their ability to push through difficult tasks with determination and energy. The power of self-talk on our body's biochemical processes underscores just how deeply connected our minds and bodies are. When we choose our words carefully and use language that is compassionate, motivating, and empowering, we activate neurotransmitter pathways that support positive emotions, resilience, and performance. On the other hand, when our self-talk is negative or self-critical, we activate stress responses that hinder our cognitive abilities and lower our physical and emotional well-being. In the end, self-talk isn't just a mental exercise, it's a biological process that can either build us up or tear us down. By consciously choosing positive, affirming language, we can influence our brain chemistry, improve our mood, boost our motivation, and enhance our overall health and performance. The good news? You have the power to shape this process through your words, so choose them wisely. Self-talk becomes identity. Our internal dialogue, the words we speak to ourselves, plays an incredibly powerful role in shaping not just how we feel in the moment, but who we become over time. What starts as a simple conversation inside our heads gradually transforms into the very essence of who we are. The brain doesn't just listen to our thoughts, it internalizes them, turning them into beliefs and eventually into an identity. This shift happens gradually but can be profound, shaping the way we see ourselves, how we behave, and how we navigate the world. One of the fundamental ways this happens is through the brain's natural tendency to align our actions with the language we use about ourselves. Essentially, the brain starts to organize our experiences around the words we repeat most frequently. For instance, if you consistently tell yourself, "I am capable of overcoming challenges," your brain begins to wire itself to seek out behaviors and situations that align with that belief. Over time, this language shifts from being just an affirmation to becoming a core part of your identity. You are no longer just someone who says they can persevere, you become someone who perseveres, not because you're forcing it, but because your brain has reorganized itself to align with that self-perception. Take the example of repeating a phrase like, "I am someone who perseveres." Initially, you might say it just to motivate yourself, but the more you repeat it, the more it starts to shape your neural pathways. The act of repeating this phrase reinforces the idea that resilience is part of who you are. This repeated self-talk activates circuits in your brain associated with resilience and problem-solving, slowly transforming you into a person who genuinely believes that no matter what challenges arise, you will find a way to push through. Over time, it isn't just about saying the words, it becomes embedded in your actions. You don't just talk about perseverance anymore, you act in ways that demonstrate it. This transformation is also heavily influenced by mirror neurons in social identity theory. Mirror neurons are brain cells that respond when we observe others performing actions or expressing emotions. These neurons are instrumental in imitation and social learning. When you repeat empowering language about yourself, your brain doesn't just listen to those words, it begins to simulate them. Your brain starts to visualize you embodying those traits, which helps reinforce that identity. Essentially, by saying to yourself, "I am someone who doesn't give up," you start to internalize that identity as something your brain believes is true for you. Your brain begins to act out what you've been repeatedly telling it, which strengthens the identity of resilience. Social identity theory further supports this process. It explains that we tend to align our behavior with the groups we associate with, and the traits we believe define us. So, when your internal dialogue positions you as a resilient person, your brain starts to associate this belief with a broader group identity of people who are strong, determined, and persistent. The more you repeat the words that align with that identity, the more you naturally begin to identify with those traits. You no longer see yourself as just someone trying to persevere, you see yourself as someone who belongs to the group of resilient people. The emotional tone you use in your self-talk also plays a significant role in amplifying this identity shift. The brain is more responsive to emotionally charged language, and when you speak to yourself with passion, conviction, or even compassion, it strengthens the neural circuits associated with those emotions. For example, if you tell yourself, "I'm capable of handling this," with genuine belief and enthusiasm, it sends a powerful message to your brain that this is not just a passing thought, it's a core belief. Over time, these emotionally charged affirmations are encoded in the brain and become more deeply ingrained. The emotional intensity behind these words magnifies their impact, making them stick more than a neutral or indifferent statement would. As this process continues, self-talk doesn't just remain words in your mind, it shapes your identity. It rewires your brain to act according to the beliefs you've repeated. You become more resilient, more confident, or more capable, not because you've been told you should be, but because you've been telling yourself that you are. These repeated words and the emotions tied to them trigger real, physical changes in your brain's wiring, making these traits part of your identity. This process is so powerful that it leads to behavioral consistency. The more consistently you use empowering self-talk, the more likely your actions will reflect that language. If you consistently tell yourself, I am someone who stays calm under pressure. You will notice yourself becoming more composed in stressful situations, even without consciously trying. Your brain has been trained through your self-talk to respond in a calm, measured way when faced with challenges, making this behavior feel more automatic. Over time, this becomes part of your self-concept, and your actions will continue to reflect the positive identity you've created through your words. Ultimately, self-talk doesn't just affect how you feel in the moment, it shapes who you are in the long run. What you say to yourself is not just a reflection of your current state, but a blueprint for who you are becoming. The more you repeat certain phrases, the more those phrases become integrated into your identity. You are literally building a version of yourself through the language you choose to use. So, the next time you speak to yourself, remember, the words you choose are not just words, they are the foundation of the person you are shaping yourself to be. Self-talk is not just a simple, fleeting process, it's a powerful and ongoing mechanism that actively shapes your identity. Every time you speak to yourself, whether positively or negatively, you're engaging in a process that helps build the person you are becoming. It's like constructing a building brick by brick. Each thought, each word, each phrase is a building block for your identity, and the more consistently you reinforce certain ideas, the more firmly they become part of who you are. So, the big question is, what kind of identity do you want to build? The language you use with yourself plays an enormous role in determining this, and it's completely within your control. Intentional self-talk is a game changer. It's not just about being mindful of what you say to yourself, it's about making sure your internal dialogue aligns with your core values, your personal goals, and the mindset you want to cultivate. Think of it like the compass that directs your actions and decisions. If you want to be someone who faces challenges with confidence, then start speaking to yourself in a way that reflects that. If you want to be someone who overcomes obstacles with resilience, then the language you use should reinforce that belief. For instance, saying I am resilient or challenges make me stronger repeatedly will condition your brain to adopt that mindset. The more often you use these empowering phrases, the more your brain will begin to view difficulties as opportunities for growth instead of threats or insurmountable problems. The beauty of this process is that it leads to lasting change. The shift in your internal language is not just a quick fix, it's a transformation. Over time, as you begin to engage with yourself using language that aligns with the person you want to be, you'll notice changes in your behavior, your emotions, and your overall mindset. The brain doesn't simply process these thoughts as temporary affirmations, instead, it integrates them into your neural networks. These repeated, intentional phrases become so deeply embedded in your thought patterns that they influence your actions, making those positive traits an automatic part of your identity. Empowering language is the key to this transformation. It's not enough to simply say, I can do this once in a while. To truly build a new version of yourself, you need to engage emotionally with the words you're saying. It's about more than just the content, it's about how you say it. Saying I am confident with genuine emotion and belief behind it sends a powerful signal to your brain that this is not just something you're trying to believe, it's something you already are. Emotional engagement in your self-talk amplifies its impact, making it more likely to stick and bring about real, lasting change. The more passionate and committed you are to your words, the stronger the neural pathways that support them become. Consistency is another crucial factor in this process. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen without repetition. The more consistently you engage in intentional, empowering self-talk, the more you reinforce your new identity. This consistent practice creates a feedback loop where your language influences your emotions, your behavior, and your neural pathways, which in turn makes it easier to continue reinforcing that same language. This process not only reshapes the way you see yourself, but also alters your brain's wiring, helping you become more aligned with your values, goals, and the mindset you want to embody. When you make a habit of speaking to yourself in a way that reflects who you want to become, you are literally building a new version of yourself. This doesn't happen through willpower alone, it happens through the combination of empowered language, emotional engagement, and consistent practice. These three elements, language, emotion, and consistency, are the foundation of self-transformation. They work together to reshape your identity and create the person you've always wanted to be. So, ask yourself, how do you want to define yourself? What version of you do you want to build? The words you use today will shape who you become tomorrow. Every time you engage in self-talk, you're sending a message to your brain about who you are and who you're capable of becoming. By intentionally using language that empowers, uplifts, and aligns with your deepest goals and values, you set yourself on the path to lasting change. And over time, that change will not just be reflected in your actions, it will become an ingrained part of who you are. If you're ready to take control of your thoughts and create lasting change, hit the like button and subscribe for more science-backed tips. Drop a comment below and share the phrase that you want to repeat to yourself every day to start reshaping your reality. Let's do this together.